Hi, team. This is Liz Whiteacre. Today we're going to participate in a revision prompt where we focus on how we are using line breaks and punctuation to guide readers through our poems. I pulled this quote from Kim Adanasio and Dorian Laux's book that we're reading, The Poet's Companion, A Guide to the Pleasures of Writing Poetry. In their chapter that focuses on grammar, they suggest if you are really interested in writing poetry, grammar can be something else, a door to rooms you might never otherwise discover, a way to realize and articulate your visions in language. I was really excited to see the poems that were shared after our prompt last week, where we explored different types of punctuation as we built a poem line by line about a powerful emotion and that moment where the speaker takes control of it. It was so exciting to read all of the different poems that might not have ever been created had we not had those goals of writing to specific punctuation marks. Today, we're going to go back to that poem, and you can pause right now and pull up its file, minimize this screen so you can have your poem sitting right next to this video. Or if you want to print it out and work with a pencil, you could do that as well. So get your stuff and join me at the next slide. So we are going to explore punctuation and breaks off the page through revision and think intentionally about the way we are helping readers engage with our words and understand their meaning. So this is my first draft. I went through and did the prompt. This focused on a moment where I learned by telephone that our pet cat had died. My now husband, we had a cat in graduate school. So this is where you're at in your draft. So open your draft. And then I'd like you to read your poem out loud. I'm going to read mine out loud inside my head so that I don't interrupt your reading. And as you read, think about the pacing, think about moments you might stumble, think about places where you find yourself speeding up or slowing down because of the ideas you're communicating, not necessarily because of what you have on the page. So I'm going to set the timer for 4 minutes. And if you need a little bit longer than that, just pause the video and come back to us after you have read your poem out loud. If I am interrupting your reading, you pause and then come back when you're done reading. If you're like me and you read it out loud, although to be fair, I was reading inside my head, if there are little editing things that you want to do, feel free. You can pause the video and take care of those little editing things as well. Our next step in this revision prompt, now that we know what's there on the page and the experience we are hoping we're giving our readers, is to copy the poem, paste it below, and remove all of the punctuation. You'll notice in mine, if you're like, wait, what's that? I left in the apostrophes for possessives and contractions. Like I didn't delete that because the apostrophe is standing in for HA, and I didn't want to change it to I had. So if you have apostrophes that are significant to the meaning, letting us know it's possessive or it's a contraction, you can go ahead and leave those in. But otherwise, we're going to time for about 2 minutes. And again, if you need longer, you can pause. But go through and delete all the punctuation. If you also want to remove all of the line breaks too, that will give you an extra layer of exploration. So make it just words. Now, if I am interrupting your deleting of white space and backspacing in order to get all your text in a big paragraph with no punctuation, pause the video and then hit play when you're ready. Otherwise, what I'd like you to do is read your poem out loud a second time. We're going to give some quiet space for this. I'm going to read mine out loud inside my head. And I'd like you to think about what changes when the line breaks and the punctuation is gone. And if you want to take any notes while you read or after you read about moments where maybe the pacing doesn't feel like you intended or places you stumble, please go ahead and do that. That will be useful feedback to you for our third phase. So we're going to take about 4 quiet moments again for you to read your poem out loud and think about what changes when your original line breaks and punctuation are gone. I am interrupting you. Hit pause, finish reading your poem, and then hit play again and join us. One thing I noticed when I was reading this out loud inside my head, so I didn't interrupt you, there are a lot of places I stumbled. I went for a stream of consciousness, this emotion, trying to process it really quickly. So my sentences are not as distinct, which was intentional, but I really struggled without any punctuation at all. That might be the case for you as well. Maybe you discovered something different while you were reading the poem out loud. So take that with you to our next and final step, step 3. Before we do, I'd like you to think about your goals for this poem. And if you want to type them up or jot them on a notepad, you can. What emotion are you trying to communicate through this poem, right? There's definitely the emotion that you're exploring. And so that would be one, but you can also think about the emotion that you want readers to feel while they're reading it. And that might be the same as what the speaker is feeling, or it could be at odds with each other. So in the poem I just wrote, I have a goal where I would like the reader to feel overwhelmed like I did in that moment. This is a personal moment I'm talking about and exploring. I want the reader to be uncomfortable. I would like the reader to kind of have that sense of that breath, when you've been sobbing maybe and it's kind of coming in and out. So I'd like to manipulate that. Uh, and I think I also have a goal where I don't want the reader to feel relief at the end of the poem. I'd like the reader to feel this grief sustained and have it be a little unsettling and not very satisfying. So I'd like you to take a moment and write down what are your goals for your poem. And now, once we turn to that, think about, I'm going to reveal mine. Think about what could you do on the page to kind of pump the brakes, to communicate maybe softness, loudness, and go back into the poem. You may find yourself making some of the same choices that you did when you drafted it for the first time, but you might also choose not to. And intentionally revision your punctuation and your line breaks. If you notice here, I put in a lot more caesuras. I did not put in a lot more punctuation. I wanted those breaks of white space to kind of be that moment when we were breathing. I also found myself putting in some parentheses in those moments where we want some hugs, and also to provide the speaker that sense of, okay, when you're talking to yourself inside your head. So that was something that I was doing. And at the end, I chose an M dash, an interruption, and then the weight of that last line hollowness. So timer is going to be set for 5 minutes. Take some time to play. Think about what the punctuation marks do to readers as they go, the expectations they set up, and think about how you can set up the poem's form and structure to make the reader physically feel in some way what the speaker is doing. So I'm going to be quiet and you execute your revisions. Now, I am probably interrupting you unless you really had inspiration and a very quick plan to execute. So please pause the video and finish revisioning your poem as much time as you need, and then return and read that poem aloud one more time. What changes in this draft as you guide readers in this way? I'm interrupting you. Press pause. All right. Sorry, this is a little bit harder to time because everybody has poems of different lengths. Um, so if you've joined us back, or if I gave you just the right amount of time to read it, I hope you've taken a moment to reflect what changes when you make these different choices. I hope that you'll set the intention as you revise this term to really think about what punctuation is doing. How can you open doors to rooms and explore them with readers through the way you are manipulating their expectations in using and not using conventional punctuation, and also thinking about white space and the line and how you're guiding us, even though a line might be short or a white space might be short, it still takes our brain time to pick up and move our eyes to the next line, or pick up and move to the next word. Things are happening in those moments, even a comma versus not a comma. Things are happening in those moments in addition to the language you're putting on the page, and it can be really powerful. And as you provide feedback for other writers, I hope you'll consider how their choices are affecting you as you read their work, because that can be a great way to give feedback, and let them know, as well as share suggestions. Hey, it could be cool to do this or to do that. Thank you so much for revising and thinking about this hard stuff with us today. Please follow the instructions for sharing your original and your revised drafts with us so that we can provide feedback. And I hope that this has been an interesting experiment with punctuation the past 2 weeks. I also hope that it informs your writing practice in beautiful and unexpected ways. Thanks for poeting with us.